Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today I'm joined with Sarah Launderville from Manomin Reson Timbers. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we've worked with you now I was just thinking about it on the way over here today, that we first met in 2013, and we were working on a home over in Excelsior for a client, and they had requested this beautiful barnwood floor that I believe they had as part of a family. It was part of their family barn, and so that was how we first met. And maybe we'll just start with that topic a little bit, because that's a pretty unique one. So her brother was it Flight 93?
Yeah, and I believe so, for 9/11. And actually, I saw his photograph is up in the Bloomington High School. When my daughter was playing basketball, I saw his photo there, and I was like, wow.
Because I didn't find out till later when we connected, because when we were designing her home, she's like, I want this wood floor. It was skip plain white oak. It was beautiful, from their family barn. And as I understood the story, it was for his family barn. And obviously he was the one that forced down that flight and saved, countless lives as they were aiming for the Pentagon, and, right here in Minnesota. So it was really touching. It was very emotional for the client, obviously. And so every time I look at that picture, every time I look at that floor, I mean, that your product, I mean, we're getting pretty emotional right off the bat, but I mean, ultimately your wood and your product and your story is an extremely emotional one. And so I think that's a beautiful thing in home building. And so anyway, that's how we first met.
It was really cool. I mean, I get very emotional just thinking about it. I think about it occasionally because we had to hire somebody to take down that barn. They shipped all the wood to us. We kiln dried it. We did everything. And so the homeowner would come in and check on the process. And at some point she couldn't come in anymore. I would deal with her husband because it was so emotional. Because that's the barn that she and her brother played in when they were little. And then, of course, he passed away on the flight on 9/11. So it was really, really emotional.
Right. Yeah.
And it was, I don't know. I just love working on projects like that because it's so real.
Right.
I don't know how to describe it. It's so real.
Right. Now it's been 13 years since we've met, or 12 years, I guess. And now whenever I can, I try to incorporate some barnwood and tell a story. And so maybe for those that don't know, give us a little 5-minute intro of, what is Manomin Reson Timber? How'd you come up with the name, and what services do you provide? And then we'll talk a little bit more on the business side of things.
So Manomin Reson Timber, we're a reclaimed wood company. We originally started with just taking Douglas fir out of old factories and warehouses and milling that up and making flooring primarily. But that eventually changed and grew as we moved into a bigger location. We couldn't really fund ourselves, the business, with just Douglas fir. Got into barnwood, set up a kiln, and really started getting into other products, paneling, timbers, just a wide array of products. So Manomin means wild rice in Ojibwe. And my kids, their dad is Ojibwe, so it's a play on words.
Yeah, I like
with
it.
The last name Rice, little wild rices.
Yeah,
so it's just a play. It's a play on words. And I originally started the business with him, with Jim, and then unfortunately it didn't work out, and we sold the business. So back in 2005, we sold the business, and I stayed on and did sales for 4 years. In 2008, one of the investors came to me and asked me to buy the business back. And in 2009, I bought it back. And the investor, luckily, helped fund that because banks at that time weren't giving.
Yeah, that was a rough time.
It was a very rough time.
Wow, that was a pretty incredible. So here the market's crashing, and you're buying a business that caters to home builders.
That's what I said to him. Why would I do this? And it's amazing because I just started calling builders saying, I'm back. I mean, I was always there, but now it's mine again.
Yeah.
And there was a different way of the way the previous owner was doing the business versus me. I mean, I just really believe in just doing the right thing. And we kind of butted heads a lot. And you're doing sales and you're making promises to people. And I believe you just have to deliver on that. And that was tough. We didn't see eye to eye. But the builders I worked with, both commercially and residentially, and the projects we did, people believed. I think they believed that I would do the right thing, and slowly but surely we dug our way out. And
I mean, it seems to me the business partners that we have, and you're one of them, the thing that stands apart with, as you go through this vetting process we've been building for 19 years for ourselves, but ultimately it's the relationships, right? And I love stories. And, we started obviously with the story of how we met, and the story of that barnwood has a story for that homeowner. And I love taking things that are reclaimed and making a story, but, on a personal level, I love, it's beautiful to see other businesses succeed. And so, I see, obviously I interact with you on a regular basis, but we also are a client of yours, and, and we see each other a lot at trade shows, and we just see each other a lot. And so I love the real aspect of, I think that's one of the most rewarding parts actually of our business. Why I love my clients, of course. I love my trade partners. I just love our industry, because I think Minnesota has so much to celebrate. And I think it's the relationships that you were just speaking to, the integrity, the honesty, the vulnerability of just, I think that's what resonates with people. I mean, there's a lot of places I could buy barnwood from, but I have a relationship with you specifically. And so for me, that's where I buy barnwood. And obviously I have to run a business as well. But at the end of the day, the relationship is frankly more important to me than a dollar here or a dollar there. And that's a value statement that I believe in, but I know, I suspect it's the same for yourself.
It is. We have vendors that we deal with that I like to find really good vendors and continue to work with them. But I take a lot of pride in the relationships we've built over the years with these builders. Sometimes I would be like, what am I doing wrong? Because for so many years, you're just grinding and working so hard, and I would lose out on a small, on a fraction of a percent maybe or something. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And I just decided, like, this is the way it's going to be, and we're just going to keep going, and eventually it's going to resonate with people. And it did. It just took time. I feel like part of it was the pandemic, maybe, because labor became short. And my motto is, we deliver right on the first time. Now, do we make mistakes? Yes, we do, but it's few and far between. We really want to deliver right the first time. And,
one thing that I want to get back to, you had said you sold it in 2005. When did you actually start it with Jim?
So Michael is 21.
Okay.
And I was pregnant with him.
Okay, so 21 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be a little
Yeah,
over
2002, 2003, somewhere in there.
Yeah. That was full time. Before that, it was like part time, just helping, because it's kind of a hobby.
Yeah.
Or was an idea, but not enough funding. I had a job. I was working airport retail. I had 10 airports. I was traveling all the time.
Interesting. So retail, like what were you selling?
At the airport, it's all like t-shirts, trinkets.
Yeah. So you're managing retail.
Yep. So I had 10 airports, managed about $50 million in business.
Oh my.
So I was traveling on the road like every day, going from one airport to another throughout the Midwest. It was a lot of travel.
Yeah.
And having baby number 3, I didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And one day I was pregnant with Michael, and I quit my job. We're going to make this into a business.
Right.
What?
It's amazing at how many businesses are started with essentially creating a lifestyle that supports the family.
Yeah. Cause I was going to spend every Friday home with the kids.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah, in retrospect. Why barnwood? Like what was the fascination, the specialty? Like how did you, because now you obviously have a very successful business, everyone knows who you are, and you have a great brand, but how did it start? Like why barnwood?
So
Doug fir. I mean,
one of the things people don't even know, I grew up in the scrapyard. Scrap metal, and we did metal and steel. My dad had a full-time job. He was a welder, but he never quite he said that we'll never make enough money if I just do my full-time job. So on the side, he was doing scrap metals, which really meant when customers are calling, I'm dealing with it on the phone. And so I learned a lot about marking up and marking down, because
how old were you at that time?
I think I learned the difference between copper, brass, copper number 1, copper number 2, yellow brass, red brass. I learned all the differences by first grade.
That's amazing.
So I'd sort metal, like literally.
So that's 6 years old. My daughter is in first grade. So you're a 6-year-old telling your clients that it was be sorting metal. That's amazing.
Yeah. The best part is when I learned in junior high about minimum wage. And then I went to my dad.
And you're like, hey.
And then my dad just gave me an invoice for like rent and all my groceries. And he's like, I'm like, let's
what a great dad move that is. I'll keep that one in my back pocket for when my daughter asks for a raise, 20 years from now.
Yeah. totally like my dad is like amazing. I mean, he taught me so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So then, fast forward and the Douglas fir thing, I thought it was a really cool idea. Jim had sold a couple projects, like a restaurant, Tejas, when it was at Edina.
Yeah.
That was all for all the stuff that he had did in there. And there was like something in the Mall of America. And I'm like, I really think we can make this into a real business. So for several years, it was just fur, maybe 3 years. And then I realized we got to expand
Right.
our offering. And I can see what's going on, through magazines. There was not, social media wasn't a thing yet.
Right.
So I just started I'm always was looking through magazines, trying to get ideas, and decided let's start doing barnwood.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to expand our offering, and a lot of it's playing around with it. And I think that's one of the things that I really feel strong that makes us different is I really understand the reclaimed wood. I understand that a barn doesn't have just one type of wood. So we call them pickup guys, pickup truck guys that are driving around with a chainsaw cowboys.
Chainsaw cowboys.
They go tear down
Watch out, ice road truckers. Here comes chainsaw cowboys.
They go tear down some portion of a barn and they show it to an architect, and it just happens to be, this happened in a real instance, 7-inch wide hickory, which it's one board, out of the whole barn maybe.
Right.
And they think that they're going to like sell all this hickory.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's not reality. It's not going to happen. And then I'm getting phone calls and I'm like, okay, reality, that's not going to happen, but we can do this wood, which will look very similar. And away we went. So a lot of it was just really understanding the nuances of what's really out there, what's available, how to work with it. It's just been a lot of trial and error.
So, speaking of this, and I want to go through your process because I actually don't know the answer to this of how you go about procuring barns. Like, where do you source this? You mentioned vendors across the country. Is it Minnesota? But before we get there, right now it seems like the last couple of years, a lot of people will see barnwood, real barnwood or reclaimed barnwood, and then there are aged barnwood, and you can kind of tell us the differences here. But I also see a lot of wood that is treated, whether it's acid treatments or paint treatments, where it's faux barnwood. Can you explain to the listeners a little bit of what the difference, the pros and cons are, and what's going on there? Because it seems like it's a bit of a branding. I don't think a lot of times people even understand. I think,
right.
Like, for instance, we do a lot of beams or mantles, right? And we had one home that we did where it was just a ton of, wall paneling and, a lot of barnwood, reclaimed barnwood. But I think people want different kinds of beams, their accents, their decorative pieces. And I know you can do structural stuff as well, but I guess that I think the average person doesn't really know what they're looking at. And even me being in the business and using your product, I can definitely tell the difference between real and, essentially manufactured barnwood. Where has that prevalence, or what do you see as a fast moving trend between those two?
Okay. Well, I certainly see it when I travel, go into the parade of homes, or I like to look at the tour, go to the tours and see what's going on. And I'll see the fake stuff. And to me, it's really consistent. It's more like getting a wallpaper. So if you're looking for really a high grade of consistency, I'm going to call it vanilla. That's just my term.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then
which is still, I think, like one of the most popular ice creams of all time.
I do love love a good vanilla, especially with vanilla bean.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's going to be very consistent.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be the biggest difference with reclaimed. There's a nuance to it. Every board is unique and different.
Tells a story.
And it's a part of Americana. America was settled by farmers. And literally, when people came to America, a lot of people got a plot of land and then throughout the U.S., but it could be a lot in the Midwest. Maybe it's 10, 20 acres. They got a plot of land and they built. They literally harvested the trees on their property to build that barn. So it's all different species within that barn. There's not.
So it'd be local. So barn species would be pretty local. So like, obviously, I'll buy it based on a look because that's what a client's trying to achieve. But if someone was saying, like your example, like, hey, hickory, I assume there's certain parts of the country that has more hickory or more oak or more whatever.
Yeah, I have
and so
to go.
Yeah.
Exactly. To where the wood grew, that's where the wood's going to be. So I have a source in Tennessee. That's where I get all my antique oak from. and my chestnut.
Why do they call it antique oak out of curiosity versus oak?
I
Because
just
it's just oak.
because it's I call it antique oak.
Well,
'Cause
it
it's
sounds way
old.
better for
Yeah,
branding and marketing.
yeah.
You're spot on. Like
I
if I
have,
had a choice between buying oak or antique oak, like I'm all about antique oak. That sounds way cooler.
and I'll tell you, we do right now. We're doing so many white oak box beams, antique white oak. We're bringing in these giant timbers from that area of Tennessee, giant timbers. They're sometimes 14, 15, 16 inches wide, maybe 10, 12 inches deep. And we're cutting them up, and we either make flooring or
Do
box
you have a
beams out of
sawmill
it.
in your
We have a
facility?
sawmill. Yep.
How big is your blade?
Um, you know, gosh, I mean, we can cut up to like 24 inches or
I mean,
bigger.
that's pretty big.
Yeah, it's a bandsaw.
Yep.
And it goes 20 feet long.
Yep.
So, but so I'm trying to think of the diameter.
Yeah,
of a
yeah, yeah.
bandsaw.
No, you're good.
Couple feet.
Yep. Yep.
But we cut it up and we kiln dry everything,
Yep.
and then we heat treat it for bugs and larvae, and then we build box beams out of it. And it's incredible. People argue with me; they think they're real timbers,
Right.
Because they look so great.
Yep.
But
So you're
that's the
taking, but to be clear, you're taking a real timber,
Yep.
you're slicing it up, and then you're making a faux beam or a
Yep.
box beam, essentially a U for those that
Mm-hmm.
are listening. And then you were attaching that to the ceiling, and then you're mitering the corners
Yep.
in a way that can't be seen. And so that's where
Exactly.
people are saying like, hey, that's a solid beam.
Yep. And we leave the cracks and stuff in the wood.
Yep.
And the white oak, though, the antique white oak does not look like new white oak. It's so, I can't even describe. It's so different. It's so incredible.
Mhm.
The grain is so tight. It has a completely different look to it.
Mhm.
It's just a very unique look. And, we've had people say, well, I want solid timber. And I just don't even want to do that order. First of all, it's super heavy to put in the machines because they'd want it plain smooth. The second part is the oak is so expensive. It's so expensive, and it's getting harder and harder to find, that I just want to get our best yield out of it. So doing the box beam.
And if there's really no difference, I mean, whether it's an architect or a client, I mean, I would be probably biased as well. If you were to say, hey, I would like a solid beam or a faux beam, maybe it's just the word faux, I think fake,
Mhm.
even though that even at a solid beam applied, most of the beams that we're putting in are not structural
Right,
anyway.
they're all
So
focused.
most of the great rooms or mantles that you would see, it's not holding anything up. It's like a tie on a shirt. It doesn't do anything. It's decorative, right? And so it's funny to me that we're so opinionated, myself included,
Mhm.
that I would be biased towards a solid beam
Yep.
because I think it's better. But it isn't any better. It's just heavier, and I can get less yield out of it, and it's more expensive. So frankly, the box beam is a far better.
And when they see how cool it looks,
Mhm.
because of the checking that we leave in it and the worm tracking, and it's so cool looking that most people are like, okay, that's.
And I've had,
Let's let
and
go.
you kind of touched on a little bit the consistency of, let's say, the acid treatment. So now
Mhm.
we'll go back to that here in a minute. So I've had clients on all over the spectrum. Half of our clients like the story. I mean, I myself like it a little
Mhm.
bit more rustic, but maybe the style of the home is not that rustic. And so they want consistency. They want, they just want it to be more consistent, as you're saying. Walk us through what do you guys do treatments on that, or that would be a competitor brand,
Yep.
if you will.
We don't. We've thought about it. Quite honestly, we don't have the space.
Yeah.
And we've got about 28,000 square feet of space for inside of a building, and boards like that have to be, anything that's under 2 inches must be inside the building. We don't leave that any wood that's under 2 inches outside.
Just because
We
it'll
leave our
warp or
timbers out.
age.
We don't want to warp, and
Yeah.
we don't want it moves. And we really want to bring it in,
Okay.
kiln dry it, nail it, kiln dry it, get it prepped so that we can start using it. We have thousands and thousands of feet of product just sitting aside, ready for the right project,
Mhm.
not knowing what the next right project.
And you probably would track what your best sellers are, what you
Yep, we
mostly
do.
push, right? So you're
So-
probably keeping an advanced portion of that.
Exactly.
And then do you track it, where it's like, hey, I do an order of, let's say, 1,000 board feet of white oak, antique white oak. Are you just every month producing so much antique white oak because it's popular? Or are you saying, hey, Mark just bought 1,000 board feet of it. I need to replenish that. So I'm back to my,
So because of the amount of box beams and flooring orders and paneling orders we're getting in white oak, we're trying to stay ahead of that and have it. We try to have X amount on the floor in the shop at any given time, but we might not have the right width sometimes. And
Right.
That's an issue. People don't really understand how much the beginning cost is. I mean, one semi-load of white oak is about 75 grand.
Whew.
Yeah, that's one load. That's the timbers. Now we have to cut it. and we got a high waist.
This is pretty specific, but it's actually, I think people would interest in this. So so like, obviously if you do a model home and you're a builder, right, you go get a loan from a bank, or you might have an angel investor, or obviously you've done very well, you have enough cash to finance it yourself, but most people would probably finance a model home, I would imagine. And so people would get a loan. And how do you, as a business, are you using a line of credit to secure this? Are you getting terms that, let's say, is it a mill or whoever you're getting these, let's say this vendor in Tennessee, they're saying, hey, we'll ship you up a $75,000 worth of white oak, and you have 90 days to pay it, and you can churn that in time. Walk me through the business terms of how that operates as a business.
Different vendors have different terms.
Okay.
And so,
of course, it would never be simple. We have to have different rules for everybody.
Has different terms depending on what their scale is. I think in the industry, it's very rare to get terms, but I've been able to build relationship over a long period of time that I've been able to get terms. So in that case, we do have terms, but the rest of some of the other ones don't. They're too small. They need to be paid.
And so those would be paid on delivery, essentially?
Some of them are paid on delivery. Some, I might have 30 days.
Yeah, because we would normally pay 50% up front, right?
Yep,
and I assume that covers that downstroke.
Cover that.
Yep.
That's what we're trying to fund.
Yep.
But we have right now over $800,000 of inventory at cost.
Just in
between timbers and boards. So we have a lot of inventory.
That's a massive business.
And we need to have that because we just never quite know. I mean, because of how business is so swift right now and busy, we try to let everybody know you need to plan 12 weeks or 16 weeks, depending on what the product is. Some things like our best selling, like some of our floors and paneling, some stuff like our paneling's 2-week turnaround if we have it in stock. But we might all of a sudden get a 5,000 foot order because we don't just ship in the U.S. We're all over the U.S. So we are shipping, Washington, Oregon.
That's a great what percentage of your sales would be domestic to Minnesota versus outstate?
I'm going to say Minnesota, Wisconsin, and North and South Dakota is going to be about 75%.
Okay.
And then 25% out of state.
Okay.
But we get a lot of it's from social media. We get people are finding us, and we're shipping stuff we just ship stuff to the Hamptons, box beams,
Yeah.
Because they couldn't find anything that could be, they wanted a full, I think 10 by 10s, and no one else can do that.
Yep.
They're all going to be glue up. We were able to do that. So, but we also do a lot of commercial. We're in a lot of stadiums. So we've been fortunate enough to.
I can see a lot of bars as well, and restaurants.
Bars and restaurants. All the punch pizzas. Shout out to John and John.
They do look beautiful. Are they based in Minnesota?
Yeah, they are.
They're my kids. I mean, I love it too. They're so good.
Yeah. My son, I should even say this because I don't want them to take me up on this. My son has begged me to negotiate a deal that he gets free pizza for life, and I supply one store for free.
That'd probably be worth it, frankly.
I'm not sure.
You'd be eating
a lot. Now he's an adult. He has to pay for his own pizza. So
no wonder he wants to make that trade. He should get in now before he has a family, or he can expand it to everyone in the shop because their pizzas are very tasty. Actually, better yet, have them build you one of their Italian Napoli pizza mills right in your. Although fire and barnwood doesn't sound like that'd be a great mix. We
have plenty of wood we can
use. You could definitely fire that thing up nonstop.
Yeah, they're a great company. They're wonderful people to work with, and we were really fortunate. We started out with it was Caribou coffee, and when John Puckett sold Caribou, then he moved on. He found John Serrano, and they started Punch Pizza, and they're just really amazing people to work with. And if you do a good job for them, they are very loyal. It's just that back and forth, taking care of each other.
Are they out of curiosity? Are they out of state too? Or are they just Minnesota only?
Right now, it's only Minnesota.
Okay.
So, and they're go to Punch Pizza.
Yeah, that's
look
amazing.
at the wood and have some pizza.
That's funny that we go there pretty much every Monday night after my daughter has dance. I pick up the boys from school, and then I meet my wife, and we have Punch Pizza. So now we usually go to the one in Calhoun. So
now you can take a
look. I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna next time I'm there. So next Monday night. Actually, I'll be gone next Monday. The 2 Mondays from now, I will take a video and I will post a story on it on the Curious Builder podcast.
Check the big giant communal tables.
Yeah,
those are Doug fir timbers.
It's funny you say that. I was literally just looking at it yesterday. So my wife wasn't feeling well, so I took all 3 kids, and that table's massive. That table must be 30 feet long, and there was a seam in it, but it was somehow joined together. And I didn't spend that much time looking at it, other than the thought crossed me while I was eating my kid's pizza when he wasn't looking. Wow, this is one long table. I wonder where they got this from.
We do three planks, 3-inch planks
That's
to
amazing.
do that. So yeah.
Well, oh man, that is incredible. Okay, I love that story. Going back to tell me a little bit about the barn takedown. So I want to talk a little bit about your suppliers and are what percentage of the barns are coming from Minnesota? Let's call it a 4-state area versus beyond that. I mean,
So
where do these barns come from? These takedowns?
we have one guy in Minnesota.
Yep.
We have a guy in South Dakota. No, a guy in Iowa that does it.
Do they work for you, or they're like a broker? They're their own person.
They're their own. I'm
Yeah.
probably their biggest
Client.
client.
Yeah.
And then we have another one in Wisconsin, central Wisconsin. Central Wisconsin just has an enormous amount of barns. Sad story. My number one vendor for years that I got most of my wood from, because that's where we get our elm ash, a lot of our weathered antique material, all of our paneling, from this one guy, and he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. And he was just an incredible guy that we worked together for so many years, and it's really hard when something like that happens, because literally when I went to his funeral, and everybody could tell I was a stranger from out of town, and somebody came up to me and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm Sarah. I used to buy barnwood."
Yeah.
From Scott. And she's like, You're Sarah, the barnwood lady?" I'm like, "Yep,
that's me."
She's like, "We've heard all about you."
Oh, that's
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was nice to meet his sister, and meet his whole family.
Did they have a family contingency plan to keep the business running, or
no,
is it?
I know I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's a lot of work. I mean,
that's was going to lead into my next question.
He was the fastest person that we had, though, that could take down a barn. He could take down a barn in 4 days. Him and his crew. He had I think 3 guys working with him.
People often, and you're no stranger to this, but those listening and maybe future clients listening about barnwood is, people think, oh, it's reclaimed, it should be free, or it should be really cheap. Or I know you're laughing right now. And because we know, I mean, that's where my lead in here is to just walk us through how much labor is involved. I mean, from obviously you've already talked about when it comes into your shop, the shipping, the deworming, not deworming, but the kiln drying to make sure that, the bugs are getting out. Walk us through just how much labor goes into actually taking apart a bark. I'd be interested to know, because I don't know. Let's say you have because a lot of the barns are in bad condition, I would guess, right? Some of them are leaning and
really
ready to.
And if it's leaning, or depending if the roof's caved in, they might not. They maybe can get the siding,
or they might will they ever pull it down and then?
They have to be really careful, because once the timber shatters, it's almost like toothpicks inside the timber. They become really, and so we won't accept shattered timbers. And I have a really amazing, we have to talk about our employees. I have an amazing timber yard manager, Matt, who's been working with us for, I think it's going on 15 years now. And he is the person that accepts or rejects when wood comes in.
Okay.
And he's phenomenal at it. And he can tell if a timber's fractured.
Wow.
Because literally, when it's fractured, the way it fractures, it literally creates like toothpicks inside.
Yeah, I get it. I've seen it before.
Really bad.
I mean, I've seen stuff where it breaks and you can almost, I know what you're talking about. You even see when you see in a wood or in the woods, if you're hiking, like a tree that'll fall down and that, let's say, got struck by lightning or something, you see that. Yeah. I mean, all the fibers essentially.
And most timbers are maybe 12 to 15 feet long. And if that happens in the center, it really just damages the whole timber. It's not worthy. We don't want to bring it in. It's not.
I mean, and I assume your vendors would know that as well. So what is kind of the rejection rate? Or they try to sell what they can?
They try to sell what they can, some of them, so it's a lot of education, and you just are educating them on every single delivery.
Yeah.
And then others, like my guy out in Tennessee, he's super sharp.
Yeah.
And he's generous. He always ships a little extra. He's a great guy. Some of them it's always short, and there's always a bundle missing.
Yeah.
On the load. It's just part of the business.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've had employees say, "Well, how it's frustrating for the employees," but I grew up in a metal scrapyard.
Yep, at 6 years old,
and we had that coming in every Saturday. People would bring in their stuff, and I could pick out it right away. There's people out there that are super down and out. My dad was very generous, way more generous than I ever felt he should be with these people. But I learned how to deal in that environment. So I feel like it's really helped me. So I don't.
That's some really early training. The 10,000 hour rule, you had that by age 10.
But now I'm kind of dealing that same.
Yeah.
With the same. Some of the people are somewhat the same sometimes, and I just understand how to deal with it, and it doesn't bother me. have more empathy for it, maybe
Yeah.
for them and what they're going through.
Yeah.
And want to really train them and work with them on how we can work with them, because I'm like, this is how much I can buy from you this year. I let them know up front. And when they understand the volume and that the money is going to be consistent, then it's like, no, let me help you get there.
Right.
And it's going to be a win-win for both of us.
I want to talk a little bit about how these vendors go about actually securing barns on other people's properties. That'll be my second question, but I still want to go back to, how does a barn get taken down? Do they start with the roof? Like, walk me through like the disassembly of a barn.
Of a barn, they're usually going to start with taking off the siding.
Okay.
And then
So they're using crowbars. Like, how are they doing
Yep,
that?
they're just using and they're trying.
So it's a lot of manual
it's
labor.
all manual,
It's all
100% manual, and they're trying to do it where they're not breaking the boards, because we want the boards intact.
So they're prying them gently, if you will.
So they have to they're peeling all that off. The next would be looking at the roof. Now, if the roof had at some point cedar shakes on it, they either have to have some other customer that will take those barn roof boards, or they know I won't take them.
Why?
1 billion nails. So all these things I find out the hard way.
Right. And
like
nails,
watching
nails
somebody,
and,
like finding out that somebody took 45 minutes to nail one board and still only got half the nails out. There's no way you can't make a profit on
Right.
that. The boards are beautiful. They're usually wider. They're big boards, because I would imagine when you're building the barn, you want to have the widest board possible to help you clad it as fast as possible. That roof, but but those cedar shakes, those nails just rot off inside, and they're just a nightmare.
So they're just sitting in there.
And there's hundreds of them, so.
And plus, if the head is off, or if there's the nail broke, so now you have the shaft embedded in the wood.
And it's
how would you even get that out anyway? Would you have to actually hammer nail it through?
Like with like a
an awl?
And something like that, just to try.
Oh my word, that does sound terrible.
It's not worth it. So
do people ever want? I mean, is that a product that anyone would ever want with the nails in it?
It's hard for us to move, but I know there's people that will, hobbyists will take boards, but we're not in that business.
Yep.
So
you want scale and quantity.
We have to be scaling. Yep. For the volume for our employees.
Right.
I'm like, it's not just me. I've got 20 other people that depend on me for a paycheck.
20 employees.
Yeah.
Woo. You can't see it. This is a knuckle bump. That's impressive.
So, so they peel that off. So they'll take a look at the roof and they'll make a determination if it's something that they can move or not. They know right up. Everybody's like, you send me naily boards, they're going right back on the truck with you. So don't waste your gas. Then they get that peeled off, and then they're going to strategically remove certain pins in the barn, because typically it was mortise and tenon, and they're going to tip it. They're going to use like a vehicle or some kind of a lift that's going to gently tip it to one side or the other, and then they're able to pick off the beams.
Gently, I bet, comes in a variety of ways.
Well, they know, like, if they don't do it gently, then
they've lost
less yield. So and they're actually, I have to say, these guys are really good at it, because we have really nice timbers.
Oh, your stuff is beautiful. I mean, your showroom is incredible. If you're ever up in Hugo, Minnesota, or just want to see Barnwood in general, I mean, no, it's an incredible showroom. I should go back there. It's been a couple of years since I've brought a client.
Added some stuff.
Yeah, well, and I know I usually will send the designer up there with the clients to, to go look at it. And so I don't get as involved with selections as I used to be, but just from a curiosity standpoint, now I'm more interested in manufacturing and, just to check it out, how you do it. I always find that interesting. So anyway, so the barn, so they disassemble it, they denail it if necessary. Then
they surface nail it. They take out the surface nails. We have to go through it. So then they load up their trailer and bring us the material, or they might store it for a little bit until they get quantity. The one thing I don't like dealing in small quantities either. I like to deal in larger quantities. I want a full
load
truckload. I want to maximize our shipping costs as well. So we're trying to maximize all that. Then when the wood shows up, we got guys, they're forklifting it off, and then they're taking inventory. And they're
so how do they inventory the species and the length, or how does your inventory process work?
It could be timbers, or and then we have different styles of timbers, our hand hewn or our weathered antique timber. Basically, those are the two types of barn timbers. But they'll also note if it's hardwood or softwood, because sometimes it could make a difference for weight depending on what kind of a building it's going into.
And for those listening, can you describe the difference between softwood and hardwood just for?
So softwood is going to be your coniferous trees and like red pine, white pine, trying to think of some hemlocks.
Mhm.
And then your hardwoods are going to be ash, elm, could be oak, maple, birch. And the hardwoods weigh a lot more. We use an average of about 4 pounds per board foot just to give us on all timbers, just so people can have a plan when they're working with their framing. We like to start really early in the game and make sure that their framing is set up that they can handle the weight.
I suspect that a constant problem, just knowing because I've done it this way, is that barnwood often ends up becoming a afterthought or like a wall treatment or an accent, and it's often not discussed early enough on the design architecture side. Is that an accurate statement?
That is,
Yeah.
Yep. But we also work with really amazing architects too that spec us in really early in the game, which we start discussing. I mean, I love having meetings before they have started digging a hole,
right?
Because then we can really plan out all the weight. We can plan everything out, and there's no surprises down the road. And more frequently, that's happening. We're really
how often. What percentage of your sales would be decorative versus like structural? I mean, do you guys do structural stuff?
We can supply structural stuff, but I would say like less than like 5%.
Oh, wow.
Everything is decorative.
Interesting. Wow.
It's just so much less expensive than trying to do a timber frame project.
We've only done one in our career, and I mean, it was all the timbers came from Montana by train, but they were new, I believe. I mean, I think
those were new fir timbers or new.
Yeah. How so transitioning a little bit, so you mentioned before social media. It was as a way that a lot of people find you, and we obviously have a mutual friend. She's been on the podcast before, Morgan Mauder with Construction to Style. How long has she been involved with kind of your social media side of things?
Well, we were with a company that Morgan had worked for.
Oh, okay.
But didn't know Morgan. Morgan had already left that company.
I see.
And I actually got introduced to Morgan from Jesse Kath.
Yeah, sure.
So Jesse and Katie were dating at the time, and came to my booth at the home show, and we talked, and I was jealous because Jesse had quit doing booths. I was still there doing a booth.
Yeah. they were actually, I think, guest number 2. So they're fans. Yeah,
I love them. They're a great couple.
They are really. They're a power couple.
Yep. They're so cool. And so they were walking around with Morgan and her husband, Jamie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
How many years ago would have this been?
Gosh, I was still doing home shows, and I don't know how many years, 6 years ago,
Sure.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I looked her up, and then I contacted her. I think I just kept bugging her, like, will you take me on as a client? But I don't think she had any clients yet.
No.
She was only going to have 4 clients to start with, and they were doing their remodeling business along with all the other stuff, her blogs and everything she's doing. And I think I just kept bugging her until she finally gave up.
Yeah, because now it's kind of it's becoming a bigger part of her business. Shout out to Morgan Mauder with Construction to Style.
She's so amazing.
They do. She's got a lot of energy.
She does.
We're involved in a few groups together, and she brings the thunder.
Yep, she does. She's like super on track always of what's going on in the industry. She's just really amazing. So they now I just turned over my SEO to them too for our website.
Yeah.
About 2 months ago.
Yep.
So that's really exciting. I originally kept it split because in the past I had issues with putting it together and not getting the service I needed.
Sure.
But I just feel really confident with Morgan. I'm not going to have that issue.
Well, and she's got great vendor relationships. I mean, a big part of, like any firm, you're buying not only them, but the brand, but also their network. I mean,
her network, that's the whole thing.
Yeah,
is how she networked with all these different companies, or I'm going to call them, what do you call them? I'm having a brain
micro influencers.
Influencers.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are all these influencers that are working on their own homes, and then we partner together with box beams or different projects. So it's really fun.
So on that front, so I was curious. I've noticed, and I'm curious if it's just me. You had mentioned earlier in the podcast that you've had a big, just in terms of sales. We're recording this right now, end of January here of 23, and obviously the last 6 months, from my point of view, things have definitely slowed down. There's a lot of interest, but people kind of in a wait and see motion. What are your projections looking like even this year compared to last year, in terms of sales, and what are you seeing for interest?
We had 2022 was our biggest year ever. It was a phenomenal year. We a lot of it's a lot of really large projects that we worked on.
Sure.
And were really fun projects. A lot of collaboration with architects and designers.
Yeah.
This year we have a third of the year already like on the books as far as like I've been told yes. And I really when somebody tells me yes, it's going to happen, I really believe it's happening because there's so much work that's gone into the
prep
whole
of it.
process.
Right.
So that's exciting. So but a lot of those jobs though are out like they're more like summer, fall, just because the projects are so big.
Right. I mean, the project, I mean, obviously if it's a bigger home, I mean, it may have started 2 months ago, you know, I mean, it might not even be, it's probably not ready for your stuff, right? Because I mean, the barn was probably coming on, you know, during the trimming phase.
And I'm also I will not ship something early. Like I was like, oh, we can put it in the unheated shed with, you know, no concrete. I'm like, no, we're just going to hold it. I really want the product to go out right. There's not going to be any issues.
Yep.
I'm like, I'd rather just hold it. So, but it's always interesting how everything ebbs and flows. You know, so we have these several big projects that are new, large, high-end homes. But then all of a sudden remodeling starts taking off. People want to work on their own home.
Yep.
So we get that influx, but it's really interesting. I feel like the commercial market stopped during the pandemic. I felt like it really stopped, and there are obviously no restaurants. We have so many commercial projects in the works right now. It's crazy. I mean, it's in Sioux Falls, shout out to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, because we have, I think, 3 restaurants
That's amazing
that we're going to be going in alone just in Sioux Falls in the next couple months. So.
Better tell the Punch Pizza guys to go to Sioux Falls.
Sioux Falls, yeah. That is quite
your son's going to go there for free pizza.
You know, quite the marketplace. Yeah, we did a really big project with a restaurateur that's in the Twin Cities here, and he opened up a place in Sioux Falls a couple years ago. But so I'm really excited because we have so many commercial stuff.
What I love about your business is the fact that you are not limited, you know, geographically. I mean, you're shipping stuff all across the country in your relationships. Obviously for myself, you know, I can't build homes out of state because my network isn't there. I mean, my network would be, but the people that can actually help me produce the home, because it takes so long, you know, it might take a year and a half to build a home. You know, I'm kind of limited geographically unless I was to, you know, expand and open up satellite offices. It
did hurt though when the gas prices went way up. I mean, that made it hard for shipping.
Well, couldn't you pass along shipping? Why would that?
Shipping can be $3,000 or $4,000, to be honest.
I mean, it would kill the sale, or because obviously if I'm in Sioux Falls and it's $4,000 more, I mean, you would pass that on to the client, right?
That yes, and they don't want to pay that shipping cost.
Sure, so it would kill it that way.
So it would kill the deal.
Yeah.
So that's one of the issues that we ran into, like within the last 2 years, maybe.
Sure.
Just the gas prices going up exponentially really did hurt a lot of our long distance job. They decided to wait because it's going to add $2 or $3 a foot to their floor.
How much do you see out in, let's say, like we had a cabin in Montana for 23 years, and you know, I see a ton of barnwood obviously in these western you know, states. Do you guys ship much to there, or is it mostly, I mean, you would obviously have competition out west, and so they're buying mostly local barnwoods from, let's say,
there's
Montana?
not a lot of barnwood there. There's not a lot of barns there, so they're shipping the stuff from the Midwest, and they're getting it from the same people, like the same locations.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they don't have. If you think about farming out there, you know, dairy farms, dairy barns, those are the barns that everybody's going after for the barnwood.
Why dairy barns specifically?
Because cows came inside, so they had to build big.
So they're big.
Barns. And when you're thinking about cattle farming, that's really more lean-tos. They're not building. The cattles are free range. You know, they're not.
That's a very interesting fact. You're 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of big barns. They're just more smaller shed-like structures. So they don't get the wood from there. The wood's got to come from.
It's interesting that style is so prevalent in Western architecture. That barnwood is, but yet barnwood is very Midwestern.
It is very Midwestern
sourced deal.
Yep. But I think that rustic nature of just the inside of the barn, the brown tones, just, you know, the rough cut of the wood.
Because I mean, if I was to close my eyes and picture like an idyllic like town or setting where there'd be a lot of barnwood, I think of like Jackson Hole or Whitefish, Montana, or Colorado. But you're right.
Have you seen a barn driving around there?
No.
Yeah.
Other than that famous red barn that you see in front of that Grand Teton. Yeah. It's like on every postcard, every photo. My sister and I climbed the Grand, I don't know, 20 years ago. And it was funny. We were looking for that barn to try to capture it, but that's the very well marketed barn, that one.
And that's probably one of the only, you just don't see barns out in that area. So, Yeah. So I'd say we probably don't sell as much material to Montana because they've got several reclaim companies out there.
Yeah.
It's more like when they're really desperate because they can't meet timelines. That's when
You
they
ever
come to
ship to
us.
Canada? I mean, I mean, there's a lot of barns up there, I would
I've
imagine.
only shipped to Canada a few times, and it's always through kind of like International Falls area.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
that area. But I would say a lot on the east and west coast, though. I mean, we've done a lot of commercial stuff. That's huge.
What
I mean,
percentage is commercial versus residential?
probably 30% commercial.
Okay.
It kind of depends on the year. It ebbs and flows.
So and then from a revenue standpoint, would it be higher split? Because I mean, that's percentage of job would be commercial, but because I'm guessing the jobs are bigger than a residential house, is that not true?
It depends.
Okay.
I mean, right now we're working, there's so many big projects going on for homes. So, and then, our commercial project was Ralph Lauren. We did the flagship store in New York City.
Oh, wow.
But it almost killed me. I mean, it was like the worst job I ever worked on.
Oh, really?
Not because of them or anything. It was just such a tough job. I had to find specific wood. It was coming out of a mill in Alabama.
Mhm.
And it was coming literally out of an old textile mill that had been shut down for 40 years. It was like 1,000,000 some square foot mill, crazy big. But I had to fly down there repeatedly to get the people that were getting the wood out to like light a fire under them. I'm like, it was so
painful.
It was so painful. And then here I am, flying to Atlanta, rent a car, drive to Alabama. And I'm like, why would these gas stations in the middle of the country have bars on their window? I'm like, here I am driving around going, I can't believe I'm driving, like sending a text message to the office. Here's my last known location. I'm meeting these two guys in a Walmart parking lot. And I'm going to drive to go look at this mill. And these two guys pull up and they're just these big guys and old rusty vehicle. And they're like, hey, you want to jump in and ride with us? I'm like, I'll just follow you.
Right. I want my escape
And I'm
vehicle.
going to a place with no electricity and we're going to walk.
Oh, my.
I didn't have a flashlight. It was like crazy. And I'm just like, what? Some days I'm like, what are you thinking? What are you doing?
I don't want to see you on a milk carton for missing persons. So bring a flashlight and
now I know
better bring some muscle next time.
So it's pretty funny, but we ended up doing a really big project with them. But boy, it was a lot of
What was the connection? How did you get connected with Ralph Lauren?
It was actually through their millwork company. So it was a millwork company out of Long Island, New York, that hired us.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. You'd think, I mean, if I was them, you'd think, well, okay, I mean, would you look on the East Coast? I mean, do you have that strong a brand or what was the connection?
It's just all like literally over the years, I've met so many people and it's kind of crazy. And it was a guy that I worked with that had a millwork shop in Wisconsin. He had not made it through the 2008 turndown.
Mm-hmm.
He went to become a salesperson for this company out in Long Island and remembered me and said, hey, sent me some photos. And I'm like, yeah, we can do it. And I was trying to do it out of fir, but Southern Yellow Pine is what it had to be. It had such strong graining that I knew the Southern Yellow Pine was the only wood that was going to work for what they needed. Then I had to go find it.
How often in a normal scenario, how often are you actually going to see a barn before they tear it down? Or is like your vendor?
Building. So I never really do that anymore. I used to back in the day. Now I just don't do it anymore. But I don't have the time.
Yeah.
And now it's like, this is what I need. This is what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. In this case, this project was so big and it was going to take about a year to do because there was multiple locations. I just had to make sure the wood was right, cut some of it up, and then figure out how we're going to time everything out by getting it dried. We had to find a high-speed kiln in Augusta, Georgia. I mean, it was like a lot of work. Get the product shipped to the high-speed kiln, get it dried. It was, it took like 5 years off my life.
So in other words, don't do another one.
No,
that.
I thought this was going to be the graving or the icing on the cake.
Right. This is a big name brand.
Not.
I think a lot of us can relate to is that anytime you have like a big name or you chase like this cool brand, I mean, you know, and someone, as one sense, you know, chase experience, not dollars. And, you know, that being said, it seems like a lot of times when you chase the experience, well, I think long-term it's beneficial to your career. It's a feather in your cap. You obviously learned a lot. I mean, it doesn't mean that it doesn't come without cost. Those projects are rarely the ones you make money on.
Yep, exactly. And I probably, I lost sales because I didn't take care of, like, there are a lot of clients that, homeowners that have seen us over the years that we were too busy to work with them. Because we didn't have the capacity. So it was a letdown to say, but you know what? It's a really good learning experience because now I know I'll never do that again because I need to always make sure I'm taking care of my core clients. Because a builder did say to me during this whole event, and I won't mention his name. He's retired now. Great guy. He said, "Don't forget who helped you when you needed help."
Mm-hmm.
When I was getting back in at 2009, when I bought the company back, it was the first phone call I made.
Yeah.
And he would just buy. There's nothing going on. He built like 3 homes or 2 homes. He put a mantle in his house just to help me out, you know. And he's like, "Don't forget."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I felt like I was like, I don't know. I felt like I was disappointing my dad when he told me
Right.
that.
Oh, the disappointment speech. That's the worst.
It was bad.
Now your son is involved, or
Yes.
multiple family members involved. What's the kind of that you mentioned employees and kind of transitioning back to your inner team.
Yeah. Well,
what does that look
my
like?
son over Christmas last year tried talking his sisters into like just quitting what they're doing and come work for us to be the dream team.
Yeah.
Because we have, you know, you raise your kids a certain way. We have the same mindset, and I have amazing kids. But my oldest is a school teacher, and middle child's still in college. Happens to be in India right now. She sends me lots of messages. She's doing her J term in India.
Oh wow, what's she going to school for?
Business.
Okay,
but not to work with me.
Right.
Because she'll tell people, my mom only let me file and clean.
Oh, funny. Well, you know, that can change. We interesting. We had Mark Shear from Shear Brothers on, and their whole family is, you know, not all of them, but a lot of them are in the business. And one thing that we shared on that podcast, which is pretty interesting, is they make them all get they have to work. I think it's 3 to 5 years for another company and or a major promotion before they can come work for the family company. And the idea is to promote growth, bring in assets, and not just have, you know, essentially, you know, just not be so insular, like bringing ideas. I thought if I had a family run company, which is another reason why I don't want my kids to get involved, because that means if I have 5 years plus I'm 6, I mean, I'd be like 75 before I could finally get rid of it. I don't want to be still, this is a lot of energy in this game. So
yeah. And my son, he's 21 and he joined right after, like, honestly, it was right. He was graduating high school. The pandemic was going on. I had some guy coming in to repart all our machines and to go through everything. And I said, "I need you in here during the day while he's here. You do your school at night."
And he was all in. He loved it.
Yeah, he was really mechanical, so he loved it. And I had or what do you want to call it? Our production manager was very challenging, having a lot of issues with this person. And we had a company picnic and outside because it was during the pandemic. And after everybody's done eating, they're like, "Hey, where's so-and-so?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's why we're here today." This person is no longer at the company. And my son jumped up and said, "Let me grab a notebook. I just want you to give me one shot." And that was a year and a half ago.
That's incredible. I bet you love that.
Give me one shot. And I'm like, okay. And honestly, he has made my life so much easier because he understands what the goal is, the goal of delivering the product right the first time. But he also understands waste, and he's not just like a spendthrift. And he's like, thinks about what he's doing, and it's been a breath of fresh air.
What's his name?
Michael.
Okay.
So you met him at the
at the
coalition, Contractors Coalition, and he remembers you.
Yeah.
That's a funny guy.
The funny guy. Yeah, don't stay around me too long because all the jokes end up being the same. So it's all right. Dad jokes in force.
But over the years, we've built like a really amazing team.
Yeah.
You know, Julie in our office, I'm sure you've talked
to her.
I've
talked to her a lot on the phone.
Just been promoted to director of operations. She's really amazing. I mean, we could never be where we are today without her. She does all our takeoffs, and her team does all the quotes and estimates, and she manages the timber yard manager, and just like, she's just really amazing. So,
and your day to day, I mean, so you're doing business development, or what is your day to day?
I still deal with a lot of sales stuff. I still am heavily involved in checking product for certain clients when we're on these big projects that I've worked on.
Sure.
I'm like, my eyes are going on it to approve or disapprove of what we're going to use. And this business development, just an array of things that a business owner does. So we have a accounting person, full-time accounting person, but I
in the office.
Also, I also am still pretty involved in that. I like to know where we're at, what we're doing.
Yeah.
So It's an array of things.
Business owner, a
Yep.
little bit of everything. Yeah.
And then, when we got one of our guys who's been with us for 15 years already. That's our timber yard manager. He's our safety manager. He's really a manager of everything, but he doesn't want to be a manager. So
Yeah.
we just pay him like a manager. So he stays.
Yeah.
He's really great.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
How and what are the next 5 years, 10 years look like for you?
Well, I'm always worried about running out of wood, reclaim wood.
Yep.
And so then I start thinking about what are we going to do that's different.
Yep.
I just, we like to just watch what's going on in the industry, what are the colors, what's happening. I'm always worried that we're going to start running out of people are going to stop using reclaimed wood, but it's luckily, you get Restoration Hardware magazine and all of a sudden, they always got timbers on it or reclaimed wood. And I'm like, oh yeah, we got another year.
Another year. Yeah.
But I think we're going to, my goal is that we're going to probably end up doubling business in the next couple of years.
Wow.
Based on volume. We're looking for additional space.
Will you be able to join where your current space is, or will it have to be another location nearby?
We probably end up having to get us another location for storage or for space.
Yeah.
We really need to get a bigger kiln set up
Yep.
for what we're doing. It's taking up too much space in our location.
Yep.
So we've got some things in the hopper that we're working on.
Yep.
And that's where my son comes into play because I think it's, this will be a great investment for him to buy property. And
I love his gumption. His go get him. I love the fact that at the company picture he grabbed a pen and paper, which is funny. That's like, as any business owner, well, I'll just speak for myself. One of my pet peeves is when I think most business owners are afraid that we want to get our ideas out, but we also don't want them all to fall to the ground. And so having record keepers, people that hold you accountable, people that help track your ideas. So I would hire your son in a second, tell him. The funny guy would hire him because I love the idea that he took the initiative to stand up and be like right in front of everyone, hey, I want this job. Give me a shot.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And he and he always says to me, I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, yeah, neither do I. So just go figure it out. I said, nowadays with Google and YouTube, and I mean, you can figure anything out. So I don't know if it's equipment down or we've got some kind of a problem. You can figure it out.
Kim, who you met on the way in here today from Sen & Sons, shout out to her, but she said her superpower is problem solving. And so, I mean, I think every business owner needs that superpower because ultimately it's like, people who come to me and, as a general contractor, and I often tell them like, I don't know the answer to that, but I know who will. I know how to get it.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I think that's even as a 6-year-old, you processing the scrapyard for your dad. I mean, ultimately that's you're figuring it out, right? And that's that's an extremely valuable skill. I remember somewhat akin to that was, obviously way before cell phones and everything, my dad was a builder and he used to make my sister and I make all his phone calls for him at night. And when we got home from school, and I remember not liking it actually that much, and I don't know if he had a master plan or if it was just happenstance, but he'd say, hey, call, Mr. Johnson, get him on the phone. And I remember just like, this is so irritating. And so I'd call the number and I'd be like, hi, Mr. Johnson. Yeah, this is Mark Williams. My dad, David, would like to talk with you. Okay, hold on. And then I would say, hey, Dad, Mr. Johnson's on the phone. And so, but I never thought about that until, when I got into business. Like that was actually a very valuable skill, not to be intimidated. I mean, I would have been a young kid, I wasn't selling scrap metal like you were, but anyway, just it's amazing how much parenting and how much just like empowering your kids, like, hey, go figure it out, go do it. And then I think that's really beneficial. Hopefully that doesn't get lost in the next generation because I think it's a very valuable tool for any entrepreneur.
It really is. We had some timbers that we couldn't get apart at our shop that they were bridge timbers and they're giant bolts through it. And I'm like, this is what we got to do. But then people are looking at me like I'm odd. They're like, how would you know? It's just funny because my dad came out to visit me and he came to the shop and then he's like, I was showing him these timbers and he's like, are you serious? You're telling me that you got these group of people and they're telling you they can't get it apart. And I'm like, and he just like shakes his head and walks away,
right?
Because there was like that was never an answer. Like no, or you can always figure it out. Just put your head to it.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time, or probably over time, knowing us. You and I could talk for days. Thank you very much for coming on the Curious Builder podcast. Where can our listeners find you?
You can find us at mrtimbers.com.
Mr. Timbers?
Yep, MR Timbers, short for Manomin Timbers.
I like that.
mrtimbers.com. And Manomin Reson Timber is our IG and Instagram handle, and we're on Facebook as well. Manomin Reson Timbers.
And for anyone also looking in the show notes and on the CuriousBuilderPodcast.com website, you'll see all of our notes. You'll see our YouTube video between Sarah and I. You also see all of her handles as well. So thanks again, Sarah,
Great.
for coming
Thank
on.
you.
It was a pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah.